Okay, hi guys, let me know if anything's better. I guess I can also uh, just turn off the webcam as well. I guess that doesn't help with stream speed. So I'll put my webcam back on next time. Okay, so my backup connection's not working, so I'm on the same connection. So I've reduced the quality of the stream, and I have removed my webcam. So let me know if it's any better. If it's not, then I guess we'll have to abort the stream until we have solved the technical issues. So let's see how it goes. So I'm gonna just fire up 2 tables, and just let me know if the quality is okay or whether it's still lagging. So Aviator says fine here was before though. Not sure what you mean, Aviator. So here with the Queen 7, I think it's important that we bet, actually. I think that's usually the best option. It is like a brutal turn card. Again, I'm going to go for like one of my underbets in this spot. Okay, he raises, probably has a 6, so pretty easy to fold. Okay, this is not lag, this is just me timing out. Okay. So okay, well, I mean, okay, that's good you had no problems, but I guess some people had a problem, and hopefully that's fixed now. I don't know, maybe it was just temporary problem with my ISP, maybe. I mean, maybe it was a webcam that didn't help as well, so we turn that off now, reduce the quality of the stream. Hopefully you can still see the size of the stacks, etc. So if this works, then we'll add some more tables again as well, but I don't want to risk lagging the stream up at this stage. So here with the jacks, we're doing pretty well, so in terms of, you know, equity and etc. That's obviously a very great turn card for us. So it's just a case of setting up stacks now, really. So we bet around 40 here. We set up a 2/3 shove for the river. I think I'll bet slightly larger than that. Queens, definitely going to open raise this. Pretty standard. Jack 9 just going to fold here versus a min raise. Okay, so at the risk of lagging everything up, I'm gonna fire up those 10 and L tables again. 7-5, just going to complete in the small blind. Going to fold the 10-2. I don't really see any need to bet this flop. Just going to give up. Although, as mentioned, like, I'm just going to make a bet on the turn, which is clearly not correct from a theory point of view, but is fine at these limits. King Jack just not going to defend here against a 4.5 ISO, but it's actually somewhat close, I think. 8-9, I'm going to defend this in the big blind versus MP open. Just going to be check folding this flop though, don't have any backdoors or anything. Ace-5, standard UTG open for me. Ace-Jack, standard UTG open as well. This guy just 2x over bet donks when I have second pair. I'm just going to fold straight away. 8-9, check fold. Ace-Jack, okay, so Probably want to bet here because like 10 Jack 3 is deceptively drawy. Like it seems like it's a dry board. It's really not. It's a pretty drawy texture. So I think betting is the bet. He can have a decent amount of straight draws, etc. He can have some pairs as well. Jacks. Okay, we could flat. I'm gonna put in a small 3-bet though, and I'm probably not gonna fold. Although I wouldn't be very happy about getting the money in. What I really want him to do is just call my 3-bet out of position like that. That's great. Probably not folding this at any point. We'll have to see what the turn card is, of course. So again, we're just gonna set up you know, a shove for the river with our sizing here. 3-set, we're just going to lead with bottom pair. If he jams, I'm just going to call. Like, I think with his stack size, we should just not be folding an overpair, even though we know he could have a set or something. This guy min raises a flop. You know, this hand's pretty good as a semi bluff. It's certainly not a good hand to call with against a flop raise. Doesn't do very well on many turn and rivers. So I'm just going to give up with that. 7-8 standard open. Standard folds on all tables. So if you have any questions, then please post in the chat, especially if it's to do with 6 max no limit hold'em. Two standard open on the button. Uh, 10-6, I don't really know if I need to ISO this, to be honest. There's fishy guys in the blind, so in fact I'll just limp behind even. Here I'm gonna ISO the Queen Jack though, 2s, I'm gonna fold this 3-bet, Queen 10. It's not a great hand to overcall. I'm getting a nice price though, probably will just fold. 6-10, I'm probably gonna fold. I mean, I don't know if I played the hand that well actually. 47 cents is okay. In fact, it doesn't need to be that big here. I bet 43. Ace King, standard open. Okay, so this guy. So obviously, like I can 4-bet Ace King, or I could just call. Either's fine. This is an interesting turn card here. I think checking back's reasonable. I'm going to underbet turn here. I'm just going to call the Ace King, but like 4-betting and stacking off is clearly fine. River here, because there's a possible flush, we have to be very careful with our sizing, so we want to bet like 90 cents here, should be fine. Okay, we chop, which is in some ways disappointing. In other ways, that's okay, because he actually just flopped it. So we were in not good shape on the flop. I'm just going to call the flop here with like backdoor diamonds, gut shot, overcards. Also river bluffing potential. You know, if he checks back the turn. Although, you know, maybe we don't need to bluff with something like Ace King. Anyway, I'm not going to call on the 4 to straight turn. I think folding's fine. Queen 4, not folding this first min raise. Could definitely a 3-bet. He bets. I'm just going to go for a raise on this flop. I think it's just slightly better than calling in this spot. Have some backdoor potential. Might have the best hand. So T.Rider says I've been researching into the small blind complete GTO strategy. Yeah, so the idea is that we complete a 70% range and we have a limp call, a limp raise, and limp folding range. And that's pretty much it. Any specific questions you have about the strategy? You know, I think the hardest part is not the pre-flop ranges as such, but it's adapting to being in a different post-flop situation to the one you're used to. But it's good in the sense that it takes better advantage of the blind structure and allows us to play a wider range from the small blind versus a big blind big blind. So that's a main advantage to the line. But yeah, at some point what we'll do is we'll construct ranges in Flopzilla for that as part of the pre-flop ranges we're making. Here I'm just going to c-bet with my bottom pair and kind of hope to take the pot down, but I've got some potential if I don't. I'm actually just going to fold Ace Jack here against the pot size open. So limp raise is obviously it's going to be maybe like tens plus or jacks plus for value, and obviously it depends on whether you're playing the GTO version or whether you're actually playing a strategy which would be better for these limits. Like you know, it might not make sense to like limp raise tens or something in these limits. You know, so anyway, like its value obviously like tens plus, ace king, that kind of stuff. You know, even ace queen potentially. Then obviously we want to balance out with some bluffs. So in our bluff range, we basically use anything that probably makes sense as a decent 3-bet bluff pre-flops. You know, things like suited aces, suited kings, maybe 1 or 2 suited connectors as well, since we're out of position. That kind of idea. So a little bit similar to 3-bet bluffing pre-flop. You know, in a flatting range, we have a decent chunk of speculative hands, and also some of those, you know, things like ace jack, which are a little bit weak to, you know, go for a limp raise for value or something. So we just put those in our limp calling range, along with some other speculative hands like 8-9 suited, which we can check raise aggressively on the flop with, when we flop gut shots and things. That's a general idea anyway. So you said, where do we land on suited broadways or ace 5 s minus? Well, I guess most suited broadways is going to be limp calls. But you know, there's not necessarily like one right version of the strategy and every other version is wrong. But I generally would recommend suited broadways are going to be limp calls. Ace 5 suited and minus, those are generally going to be limp raises as part of our bluff range. But you know, like it's you know, it certainly wouldn't be incorrect to decide you want to include something like ace 5 suited in your limp calling range. I think it's clearly strong enough to do that. So I think, you know, that would be reasonable as well. Or again, you know, if you wanted to be very specific about it, then you might find that ace 5 suited, we should play a mixed strategy. We should sometimes limp call, we should sometimes limp raise. Hello Dino Gatch, welcome to the stream. We're just going to be playing another 40 minutes or so of snap poker here at 888, then we'll call it a stream. So I'm not really focusing on the action actually over the last few minutes, so maybe I should focus a bit more. I'm slowly bleeding money. So probably we'll think about overcalling this 5-6 suited versus the min open and a call. Should be profitable. This guy raises, now I'm going to ditch the hand. Yes, Tita Rider, it is very similar to a re-steal range basically. So anything that you'd use to re-steal with probably makes sense as a limp raise. And you know, also keep in mind that obviously when we are re-stealing, we'd obviously have the value part of our range as well, which is going to be similar. But you know, the reason why it's dependent on limits is, you know, like something like, you know, tens might not be a great hand always to re-steal with against every player at the micro limits, but it might be a re-steal as part of a GTO strategy. So you know, the limits we're playing at are certainly relevant. Okay, so this looks fun with the aces. Let's see what our squeeze size should be. Should be pretty big. I think this is fine. Might even be too large. But usually when I say that, I end up getting a bunch of callers, and I wish I'd made it larger, so I think this is going to be reasonable. So 5-2-9, very nice flop for us. Queen 10 just going to check call, King Jack open, 2-8. So I'm just going to bet with the aces. Oh yeah, I'm just going to check call the Queen 10. I don't think it's a great spot, to be honest. Ace King, standard open, and now it's probably just a check fold, although we do pick up the redraw to the nuts. I'm kind of hoping he checks back, which he does. He could so easily have a king as well and just like bet the flop and then check back when he picks some showdown value on the turn. So it's not a great spot for us. We just hope he checks back. But yeah, he's done that. He's picked up a king on the turn. Ace Queen. I guess we can just about cold call here. I think it's not a great spot. Okay, this guy just 4-bet squeezes. I think we're probably dead here with ace queen actually. Like, this is just an uncommon line. Like, he's not bluffing here ever. I'm just gonna overcall with the 3-4 suited and the big blind here. If it was three-way, I'd lead the flop. I think four-way. Just gonna check here. Thanks for their comments, Dino Gatch. That's cool. I'm glad T.Rider that the limping strategy is helping you. It's always good to hear that my advice is helping people's win rate. Okay, so 10 jack here. I think no backdoors. We just check back again. We go for delayed c-bet like a ton of these limits. It's interesting. We pick up a jack, so now our delayed c-bet is probably going to become an underbet. I think we should call the turn when we turn the jack, but it's probably very close to being break even. I think the only thing that makes it slightly plus EV is the fact that we could spike a 10 or a jack, and you know, a small chance our jack is good, but I think he probably just has an ace and then he checks the river because there's a 4 straight out there. So no, he has 9s. That's great, good for us. And that's how he should play 9s. He hasn't played 9s badly there or anything, but I don't necessarily expect the average guy to know he should be leading 9s in that spot. Okay, this is interesting because monotone texture. We do have top pair, but obviously our kicker is very bad, and you know, it's a monotone texture. So here's another good spot to just bet really small. You know, we don't want to give free cards, but we don't want to bet too big because it's so easy to just isolate yourself against a range that has you in bad shape in this particular spot. King 2. I'm just gonna check, and you know, might come to life on the turn if he checks back. You know, it's a pretty blank turn card, so let's go for a slight overbet on the turn here. Okay, so King 9 probably just about okay to put in a re-raise here. Ace 6. I'm just going to keep on doing the same thing. I'm just going to bet very small here and then probably check back like every river. Although you could think about bluffing a diamond river. You know, even at this stage, like I think we might just not have the best hand that often. Let's see. Okay, we have the same hand. Okay. Okay, Queen 5 just gonna fold. 7s against the min raise. We have to at least set mine here. 2-4 just gonna fold here. Jack 7 could ISO. I don't think it's a big deal if we don't like raise Jack 7 offsuit pre-flop in this spot. We're still going to play a heads up pot post flop whatever happens. This guy puts in a big squeeze. We're not getting the right price to set mine, so folding's fine. Just going to actually we have a gut shot. I'm going to raise. Probably would have made it a bit larger actually, but I think my time bank was getting a bit close. Obviously, like just snap fold 23 bet here because guys just don't 3-bet the flop very wide. So like if he 3-bets, he has an overpair or something decent. Ace 9 standard open from MP. Again, I'm just going to fold to the squeeze with Ace 9, especially since I'm in MP. Like the squeezes range is usually pretty strong at these limits. Queen 10, standard open. Ace King, hopefully we get some action. Got Jacks on table 3. Okay, could squeeze, could call. Let's go for the squeeze here. I think calling is completely fine though. I don't think you have to squeeze. Like it's very unfortunate if UTG decides to 4-bet in this spot. It's just not good for us. This situation we don't mind so much, obviously, and I'm not just saying that because we flop the set, but generally like that's the either we get false pre-flop, that's fine for us, or you know the button calls because he's the one that generally has a cap range. You know, this is a pretty dangerous texture. I'm going to c-bet here with the King Jack. Ace King, I don't think I can call it a second barrel here. It's difficult to say whether this King is a good turn card for us. He doesn't have too many combos of King Jack. I suppose you could have Ace King. Either way, I think if he has this beat, he has this beat. I think it's just a case of trying to extract value. In fact, I'm going to do something I won't normally do. I'm going to bet quite large and leave a little, very small river bet left. I think exploitatively that just makes sense against this guy, but I don't do this that frequently. And you know, I can't not value shove here. You know, he can have ace king. I think that's about it though. I can't really think of anything else. Very rare he has kings or aces here, so maybe he has queen 10, maybe like he can't fold like ace queen or something. Threes, I think like our threes is just vulnerable enough that we should bet for protection. We just want to try and get folds here, but you know, we could get floated by like some ace high type stuff. I'm just gonna check back. Okay, so I'm just looking at your question. Actually, let me just let me sit out on these 10 and L tables. I'll keep the 5 and L ones going. Let me think about your question, because it seems like it's a good question. So you said in last week's stream you shone some light on a few poker fallacies: not c-betting every dry flop, not 3x small blind, varying opening size versus fish. Yep. Anyone can offer out, or maybe this would be a good idea for a new video. And I mean, to be honest, there's like so many that it's crazy, because if you go to, you know, any forum, or even if you watch like the vast majority of training videos these days, you'll get such a mixture. Like, you'll get some good advice, and then you'll get some bad advice which has been like recycled from a training video like 4 years ago. And you know, some of these things as well, like you start out learning to play poker at maybe like a training site or somewhere, and you know, some of the resources at that site, some of the articles might be like 5 years old or like even older, and you're looking at this stuff, trying to work out how to play. You're also chatting to guys who have very warped ideas about the game, but may have been playing longer than you, and as a result you tend towards listening to them. So you know, to give like another huge poker myth that's been around, and if you ask most poker players, will still say it's true, is in terms of bet sizing. So you've probably heard this one. On drawy flop textures, you should bet quite big. Generally, you should always bet big on a drawy texture. On a dry texture, you should always bet small. And you know, this to me has to be like probably one of the worst pieces of poker advice ever. You know, if you followed that rigidly, you might find that you actually made the best decision more often you didn't. In other words, maybe, you know, 55% of the time on a dry texture we should bet small or something. But you know, like you're missing out on that other 45% where you're making the worst decision because you're trying to follow some kind of formula for actually playing the game. In other words, if you analyze, you know, various situations and think about constructing ranges, it becomes pretty clear quite quickly that there are spots on drawy textures where we should underbet and bet very small. There are spots on dry textures where we should think about overbetting. Like, it doesn't necessarily make sense. And you know, there's always you know, in terms of bet sizing, there's always two approaches to bet sizing. You've got the exploitative approach, and you've got the GTO approach, game theory approach. So you know, to take something like you know, we open raise pre-flop, board textures king 7-2 rainbow or something very dry. Exploitatively, we might find ourselves in a situation where our opponent's a huge calling station, and you know, we've got a set or something, and it doesn't really matter which sizing we pick. In fact, it does matter, but what I mean is we're not going to get folds. Our opponent's going to call us down anyway. He's either calling or he's folding. So you know, why bet small when you could bet pot size? You could overbet on a dry texture and get value from your opponent. So you know, exploitatively, it makes sense to bet big on a dry texture some percentage of the time. Or exploitatively, if you know your opponent's range is capped in some situations, so like, you know, a dry turn card or something, you know his range is capped in certain spots, you know, given the flop action, then you can overbet exploitatively to fold out his capped range. So you've got another situation where we'd be betting very big on a dry texture as an exploitative measure. Then of course there's like the, you know, GTO approach, which is a little bit more complex and might not be that relevant to, you know, what we're doing right now at, you know, 888 snap. But the general idea is the narrower your value range and the more bluffs you have in your range compared to value hands, the larger you should bet. In other words, overbetting allows us to have a wider bluff range. We can have more bluffs in our range as a result of overbetting. So generally speaking, from a GTO point of view, if we're in a spot where our range is very weak and we have a ton of bluff combos and not really many value combos, we should be overbetting. Whereas if we're in a spot where our range is very strong, we have a ton of very strong hands but not really many bluffs to balance that out with, then we should be betting very small. So what we can see is that this could easily apply to a dry texture. In other words, we could have a very weak range on a dry run out in some particular cases, depending on the exact line we took in the hand. And as a result, we want to maybe think about including some overbetting as part of our strategy. So even from a GTO point of view, there's spots where we should be betting quite big on a dry texture, spots we should be betting quite small on a drawy texture. So I mean, that's definitely one of them in terms of like horrible poker advice, which is probably going to do you more harm than good. As for others, let me see if I can think of another good one. I mean, the funny thing is that most pieces of bad poker advice are based around something that has a grounding in truth. In other words, like to give another example, you'll probably hear the advice: always play your draws aggressively, because you've got two ways to win the pot. You can either get folds, you can make your draw. Like, very common. This guy's just got a flush on table one. It's that simple. So yeah, we were told like a flush draw, always play aggressively because you've got two ways to win the pot. And that does have a grounding in solid advice. In other words, your pot equity combined with your fold equity can make a situation more profitable than just taking your pot equity by itself. But you see, if we always play our draws aggressively, we're playing badly in some situations. There's a number of spots where it's correct to play our draws passively, and again, there's two approaches to this. There's a spot where we should play our draw passively as an exploitative measure. There's a spot where if we were trying to consider GTO principles, we'd play our draw passively as well, for like things like range protection, etc. To give the exploitative point of view, imagine we have a flush draw against a calling station who never folds anything. We're actually just putting money in the pot with the best hand, with the worst hand if we play aggressively in that particular spot, and our opponent's never folding. In other words, the best way to play a draw against a calling station is just to play really passively, try and hit your draw, then start playing aggressively as soon as you've hit your draw. In other words, like some of these slightly more advanced concepts, which are really not that advanced, such as okay, let me just think about this ace queen actually. Again, I'm just gonna keep on doing this because I think this is actually pretty strong in this spot as well. So I doubt this is a bluff raise, although he looks like it might be a reg. So like, to take a slightly more advanced concept, which is, as I say, really not that advanced, like a spot where common poker advice is we see by the flop, if we turn our draw, we should always barrel. I mean, again, that's close to being good advice, but it's actually not good advice. It's because if in that same spot we might turn our draw, turns out our opponent is a calling station, and we should play our draw passively in that spot. Okay, so I just led the queen king here. I guess the cutoff could have a pocket pair or something. Probably does actually. This looks like 9s or 10s to me, because he would jam like those hands with like 40 BB stacks. So yeah, I mean, obviously it's a fold. Just useful to think about what they might have though in that spot. So let's see. T.Rider says, no wait. I always felt on dry ball a lot of the time if we don't bet big, we're missing value against the biggest part of his calling range. I always hated old poker adage too. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes a opponent is going to have hands that are always calling, whichever size we pick. But obviously, the strategy you want to pick is the one that makes the most money against his entire range. So we might find if we're in a certain spot where the strongest hands in his range always call, then we should be focusing on those hands, the hands part of his range which will respond differently to different size bets. In other words, we need to focus on the part of his range which is sensitive to sizing and manipulate his continuing range that way. You know, for example, like, you know, to try and illustrate this, a common spot is, you know, let's say we get to the river, with like the nut straight or something, and like people's automatic reaction is just to bomb the river because they have the nut straight, and in their mind they're thinking, if my opponent has the next boy straight, he'll always call, so therefore I should just bomb the river in this spot. And then because we bomb the river, our opponent folds all his 2-pair stuff, he folds his sets. Whereas actually, we're going to get action from the top of his range anyway. You know, we could bet really small and he's going to raise his straights anyway. But the advantage of being a smaller sizing in that spot might be he still raises his straights, we still get maximum value for those, but now we also start getting calls from stuff like 2-pair, trips, etc. In other words, just because our opponent, the top of his range, will always call, that doesn't necessarily mean that's the part of his range we should focus on, because we might get action from that part of his range anyway. Like, the part of his range we have to focus on is that part of his range which is sensitive to the sizing that we use. Okay, I hope that makes sense anyway. So here we have kings. We're obviously just going to 3-bet and try and stack off. And if he has aces, good for him. He folds, okay. So I can't think of too many more myths at the moment, but there are definitely tons. Like, let's just say 90% of poker advice you have received in your life is garbage information. That's just true of anyone. That's true of me. Like, 90% of the information I've been exposed to does not help me become a better player, and may actually make me a worse player if I don't use, you know, my thinking ability to like filter out that useless information. You know, in other words, you could have access to all the best training sites in the world, for example, but if you can't filter out that useless information, then you're not going to improve as a player. Like, ultimately, someone can tell you something, but you have to be the final decision on whether that piece of advice gets incorporated into your strategy or not. If you start blindly trusting people, that's when you start to get in trouble in this particular game, because especially it gets complicated when you listen to one coach and he'll tell you to 3-bet a certain range, just as an example. Then you go and watch another training video from another coach and he'll give you a whole bunch of reasons why the first 3-bet range you looked at was terrible, and how you should 3-bet this range instead. Then you go and watch another coach and you know, give you even a slightly different point of view in this spot. And the problem is, now you're confused because you can't just like follow the advice you've been given, because now you have like 3 or 4 pieces of conflicting advice. That's not going to help you at all. So ultimately, you have to decide. You have to take into account everyone's point of view, and then ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to be the one that makes the decision and says, okay, I don't like coach 1 and coach 2's point of view. I think that's no good. I like this point of view because of these reasons. I think this is a stronger strategy. In fact, I'm even going to modify this strategy slightly to make it stronger. You know, now you're in a stage where you've taken advantage of all the information that's out there, but you've managed to filter out that bad information, which is it's a very important skill if you wanna get anywhere with this game, basically. Okay, so I'm not going to barrel the offsuit 6 here. Although this is one of those interesting spots where if he checks the river, you could think about overbetting, because like he doesn't have an ace now, right? I'm just a little bit worried that that queen is connected with some of his range. Like, he could have stuff like queen jack. Who knows if he's folding now? So there are better rivers, but let's try this out just for fun. Just overbet the river here. You know, I think his range is capped in that spot, basically, very capped, because like most guys are just going to lead the river there. So, you know, we want to mix both underbets and overbets, and as you've seen, I'm mixing in a ton of underbets the way I play. I haven't seen too many overbets today, but like I think that's a great spot to overbet. So basically, even if you know, we c-bet the flop and we have a plan for which turn cards we barrel, and then the turn is not one of those barrel cards, so we have to check the turn. That doesn't mean we're giving up in the hand, because you take that particular line. Most guys are not going to protect their double checking range on the river like that. Usually means they're capped, so we can take exactly the line we've just taken there. Ace king could re-raise. I actually just prefer flattening this and playing a position. You know, like if I had a choice between whether I want to stack off pre-flop with ace king, like I nearly always would not want to stack off with ace king pre-flop, because there's just so much more money to be playing post-flop as far as I'm concerned. Okay, now this is very worrying, like extremely worrying. He just pot sizes the turn. This is like brutal. To be honest, this looks like ace 9 suited, stuff like this all day. Like his sizing is a huge tell here. I highly doubt he's doing this with ace queen. I think he would bet like 60-70 cents with like ace queen. Looks like he's just spiked 2 pair and has a bet sizing tell. So I'm actually just going to hear a fold here with the ace king. Okay, I don't know how I ended up back on these tables. I don't recall opening them. Let me just set out these tables again. 6-7 gonna open. So T.Rider says, I think it comes down to the coach's playing style in situations such as this. I found taking their advice and putting my own style into it works best for me. Interesting you mentioned this because you made a video called Bluffing is Crushing. I think that was the name. I don't think I made a video with that name actually. I've made like videos about bluffing, unless it's possible that I made it for Poker VIP, and they like added like a title to it that I didn't have, if that makes sense. Just had time to see about the 6-7 there, 7-8. The ace is not a good barrel card. I don't know why I don't bet. Normally would check call here, so that was a misclick, I guess. Oh yeah, yeah. You know what? Actually, I think that's a really old video. Actually, like I think that video was like 2 years old, and they like re-released it recently because I wanted to put it on PokerTube as like, or somewhere as like a guest video. You know, which is, it's fine by me. You know, like it's their video now, so they can do what they want with it. But I actually think that there's more. Wow, this is really sick with the 7-8. I actually think this is a fold. I know it seems like super nitty, but okay, here with the, I'm definitely going to barrel the 6-5. It's actually a nice river bluff hand with the 6-5 here. Okay, we don't need to bluff the river again. Like same kind of spot. If we get raised here, like it's super sick, but I think we actually have a fold here. Okay, but he just calls, which is what we want basically. Yeah, anyway, I don't think it's a bad video. I just think it's lacking like some of the more modern concepts that I generally talk about now. Because like the video, I think. Well, let's just see. I think it's actually at least 3 years old now. And just in terms of like the content I make, I mean, I'm obviously like much better player now than I was when I made that video like 3+ years ago. Because I remember actually watching it the other day, and I remember thinking, okay, I don't quite play like this anymore. But then again, I didn't watch the whole video, and I don't think there was anything like incorrect in the video or anything. I think it was just like a little bit vague and non-specific. So in other words, I think it's an okay video, but there's like a more advanced content that I've made on 3-betting now, especially in my latest series, the Red Line Rampage series, which was not for Poker VIP. It's on a different site, but okay, here in the 10-jack, we just have a bluff catcher, but we can't check call, so I'm just going to check. Hope he gets checked down, but you know, statistically, probably one of these guys has a diamond and we lose. So yeah, like the latest video I've made on 3-betting, yeah, it's a 3-betting episode from the Red Line Rampage series. Yeah, you know, I'm not 100% sure which video you're talking about, T.Rider. It might be the one I'm talking about. It might not be. It might be a completely different video. But yeah, anyway, laggy 3-bet ranges are generally good. You know, I've made a few different videos on 3-betting actually, so I'm not 100% sure which one it is. Like if you wanna find more content, then I recommend you just add me on Skype, because like obviously I can't like advertise stuff here. So my Skype, I'll just type my Skype in the chat. If anyone wants to add me on Skype, they can, like because yeah, I can't start advertising various websites. Like obviously I can only advertise pokervip.com while I'm here, so I'm not gonna like plug all of my training videos and strategy content. But if you want more information, you can just add me on Skype, and I'll tell you where you can find that stuff. Okay, so we flop a set here. I'm not gonna slow play here. I'm just gonna lead. Definitely committed against a $3 guy. If he has pocket king, good for him. Okay, this guy folds. Ace-9, gonna open this. Ace-Jack. Gonna ISO raise, but I'm gonna ISO raise quite small again because of the guy's stack size. But I still think ISOing is the best option there. Yeah, I'll see about this flop with my 9 high flush draw, which is not a very good hand. That's an interesting turn card. Okay, I'm gonna check. Probably check call 1, check decide river. Although again, there is an argument for just betting. Ace Jack. I might sometimes c-bet here, but not against the guys with a shorter stack. We should have less of a bluff to value ratio against the shorter guys. I'm just going to check call 1, and you know, I think in some ways it's a bad river. In other ways it's okay, because like he might not bet now. Like some of his holdings, he might decide to check back. It's bad in that obviously I can never check call if he does bet. Alright, yeah, okay, let me just click on that link that you sent me. Okay, I'm just going to call here with my gut shot. I don't think I was quite getting the right price. Yeah, this is the one I thought. This is a really old video. It's definitely not from 2014. That's just when it got uploaded again recently. Basically, it's I think this ace jack was a bit marginal. I wasn't really paying attention to it. Yeah, so that's a really old video basically. That doesn't mean it's like useless or anything, but it's from a long time ago. It's definitely years old. Yeah, I mean, I think it probably is still useful information. Yeah, definitely. Okay, I'm not going to fold my top pair to min raise here. I don't generally fold top pair to min raise ever, unless it's like in a 3-bet pot or something. We're still drawing to a straight here as well. I think facing a turn bet, we should seriously consider mucking our hand. Could be drawing basically dead at this stage, potentially. 6-7, no equity, just going to check fold this one. Ace-5, this is my standard 3-bet range. Somewhat conscious of the fact that there's a short stack in the big blind, but in general should be good. So like this is one of those spots where we should just always lead the river here with 6-7, like 3-way. If someone's got a jack, great, well done. But if they don't have a jack, they're folding a huge chunk of the time. So okay, he has a jack, there we go. But I mean, okay, so it was the ace-5. We don't have any backdoor equity. This is a good spot to check back. You know, we might turn an ace or something. The question is now, yeah, I think he probably doesn't have a king. It's a little bit tough actually. We could think about just like turning a hand into a bluff here. Could even overbet here again to like fold out stuff like 10s, but whether he actually folds 10s, I don't know. Or we could just like focus on a smaller part of his range with stuff like ace-queen, which now gets there on the river. I think you know, there is of course a chance that he plays a king x hand this way, but let's just say most guys will lead the turn with a king x hands. Anyway, I think maybe we've just dodged a bullet there, so I think the hand was fine. We don't have to bluff in like every spot necessarily. So it's been an interesting session where I think we're about break even for the session actually. I don't think we've run super good or anything. Like, I think we're getting like flush over flush quite a bit and stuff, but you know, this is how the game goes. It's all very standard. Tens could definitely 3-bet against the min raise. We can also call in the spot as well, so again, probably a little bit of a mixed strategy going on here. The tens is just really not that vulnerable. I mean, we can bet small for protection here again as well. And that's a pretty sick river card. It's not a big pot though, so it's not a big deal, but we've probably just been sucked out on. Yeah, he just sucks out. Queen 5 not going to defend this. Anyway, at least we, you know, it's always better to break even than it is to like lose like 10 buy-ins or something. So, and I think, you know, since I'm not really following too strict of a bankroll management, I think we should be good to play like 2 tables of 5, 2 tables of 10 from now on. Otherwise, this could take way too long. I'd rather like this be a semi-exciting spin up and then we end up going broke than like just a huge grind. So here we have the we have a gut shot here. I've actually already forgotten what happened pre-flop. I'm just going to raise it up with my gut shot. Okay, so I mean, obviously we can't fall for 10 cents. I think re-raising again might be burning money, although I definitely have seen spots where we can get folds in this spot. I'm just going to call and see the river. Might be an interesting bluff card. Does he fold a jack? I don't know. You also have stuff like 8-9 which we actually beat. I'm going to put in like a value raise here. This could be like pretty suicidal if this guy's fishy. We kind of have like conflicting things here because, you know, if we raise too small we might not have enough fold equity, but if we start raising too big we don't really represent the hand we're representing anymore. And that really depends on what kind of level our opponent's on. Like, if he's on a slightly higher level, we should actually not bet too big there, because we just wouldn't bomb the river if we like rivered an ace there or something. Then again, if he's not a high level thinker, then we just want to bet quite big just to ensure that he does actually fold like his pair of jacks or whatever. So it's a little bit of a tricky spot in terms of we don't necessarily 100% know what the best line is there. Okay, so I keep sitting on these 10NL tables, but yeah, I'm kind of winding down now, so I'm just gonna, I don't want to play any more 10NL tables now. I'm just gonna wind down, and if you have any questions before we finish, we'll probably finish in like 5 minutes or so. So for the next stream, which again is going to be 3 PM UK time. So if you see any other time that says otherwise, then just ignore that. It's 3 PM UK time next week. Here I'm just going to see it with my gutter. So what we'll do is we'll continue with a few more pre-flop ranges in Flopzilla. We'll also continue looking at the HUD. I stopped like halfway through. I don't know whether it was because of having lag issues, but basically as soon as I started looking at the HUD, like the stream went from like 20 guys to like 4 guys. So I don't know if that was just because my HUD was really boring, or whether the stream was lagging and that's why everyone left. I'm not sure, but either way, if it was interesting, we'll continue with the HUD stats next time. You know, I certainly think it's useful, even if it's not that interesting. I certainly think like it can make you a much stronger player. T.Rider says, one thing I found with those small donk blocker bets is these guys don't fold their draws versus raise no spots. What's the point of block betting if you're calling? Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Although I do find, and not necessarily through bluffing, but basically I have found that in spots like someone's donk bet the flop, min donk bet, I raise because I've got a set, and then they min donk bet the turn, and then I raise again because obviously I've got a set, so I want to raise for value, and then they end up folding, and then I always feel a little bit like, well, I expect you to call in that spot, because most of the guys, bet small and then they don't fold. But it seems like there are actually spots where we actually have some fold equity by going for the the double raise in that spot, because that's how we play a value range generally. So but yeah, I mean, trying to like say what's the point of block betting and then calling it 8x raise, well, there might be no point, but they don't necessarily know that. Like, we can't try and apply logic to some of the things that they're doing, because that's not how they're thinking there. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I mean, they'll do it for different reasons. Like, one guy might do it because he thinks that he's going to get to see his draw cheaper. Other guys might do it because they actually think that they deserve to win because they've got a strong hand. It's like the reasons won't necessarily be logical, but each of them will have probably different reasons for doing that kind of thing. Okay, thanks, Athene. I'll speak to you on Skype. Tito Ryder says, will this week get posted on YouTube? Yeah, I'm going to try and post it on YouTube because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. The only thing is, it's obviously going to be a bit complicated because the stream went down at one point, then it came back up, then it started lagging, so I had to take it down again. So I guess the video is going to be in like 3 parts, so I don't really know what I'm doing and how to upload it to YouTube, so I'm gonna try and put it on YouTube, and we'll see what happens. Skype name is the same as my alias, which is Weasel. I'm the one from UK, so apparently there's like a German guy who's got the same Skype as me, but that's not me. I'm from England, so you should be able to tell from my location. So thanks everyone for the ads. I think I'm offline at the moment, but I'll be logging into Skype after this stream. Okay, so I think we have a few more minutes, so any questions before we go? Just play a couple more hands to finish off, I guess. So in terms of our bankroll challenge, we're doing okay. I think we're actually up like $1.50 or something, which is pretty reasonable given that I don't think we've ran that well today, really, to be honest. But 888 snap is very soft. Like even if you run bad, you usually end up break even rather than down like 10 buy-ins or something. Okay, so no problem. Thanks everyone who came to the stream, and hopefully I'll see you guys again next time. So 3 PM UK time. Also keep in mind that to keep it nice and interesting, I wouldn't mind checking out some hands. So if you've got any hands you'd like reviewing, then just mark them, upload them to Week Tight, and then bring them to next session. Post a link. I'll open up the link on the screen. We'll run some analysis on your hands, etc. That seems like a pretty logical thing to do. So be thinking about it when you're grinding this week. If you run into any interesting situations, then why not mark it, and we'll have a look on the stream and analyze. Yeah, Week Tight is actually, I read earlier that the company that owns PokerVIP.com, they actually own a bunch of other like media sites like PokerTube, Week Tight. Basically, Week Tight is it's just a site where you can upload your hand histories so that others can. It's like a replayer, but it's not. You don't actually click buttons like a replayer. It just displays the hand in like a text and graphic format, but it's not a replayer like Hollow Magic 2 replayer. In fact, I'll just bring that up on the screen. Let's just. In fact, I'm done for grinding today. That was a pretty long session. So let's leave those tables. Let's quit while we're ahead. Okay, so weektight.com. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. So yeah, here's Week Tight. I think it's had a revamp recently. Basically, you just come here, you paste your hand history, they convert your hand for you, they give you a URL, and then you can just post that URL. Yeah, Aviator71 says prefers the older look. Yeah, I think maybe I prefer the older look. Sometimes it's just because you're getting used to the new look, though. You know, like in 6 months' time, maybe we'll just be used to this version of weak tight, and then we won't believe how it used to look before. But yeah, certainly it hasn't been as easy to like read the hands as I found it before, but you know. So anyway, you can come here and you can check out people's hands. But anyway, post your hand history in here, get the URL, post it in the chat. Then you know we can run some analysis on your hands. Okay, cool. So let's call it a stream today. Hope to see you guys next week at 3 PM UK time. So in the meantime, good luck at the tables. And for those of you who added me on Skype, I'll chat to you pretty soon.